You're listening to the MindPod Network. Friends, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies has a new podcast out called the MAPS Podcast, and I'm the host. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher and check it out. It's all happening. 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 It's all Hello, friends. How's it going? Welcome to the podcast. This is episode 84 of the It's All Happening with Zach Leary podcast. I'm your host, Zach Leary. Thank God I'm your host. I mean, it could be the It's All Happening with Zach Leary podcast, and I suppose somebody else could host it. But that would make it into sort of like this egocentric institution. Like, you know, when it used to be The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson with guest host Jay Leno. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever do that. I don't think, it just wouldn't be the same now, would it? Really happy that you're here. Episode 84. This week we did something a little bit different. We recorded this episode, or I should say this episode was recorded at the live Mindwave gathering, which was just about 10 days ago here in Los Angeles. And it was basically a day full of live podcasts and discussions and explorations into consciousness and various spiritual and or esoteric mystical practices. And this, the panel that I was on, it was loosely about spiritual materialism, or maybe a little bit more than loosely. Yeah, it was about spiritual materialism, and had myself, Daniele Bolelli, Michael Phillip, and Cory Allen, all great podcasters in their own rights who have very fantastic and in-depth and lively podcasts of their own. So that's what we did. And we just kind of sat around for just a little bit over an hour and had this interesting discussion about spiritual materialism. But the constructs of spiritual materialism take into account a few assumptions, one being reality.
You understand now that you are no longer a fairy in a platonic superworld, but that you are actually a monkey with a brain full of mush trying to sort out, what's right in front of you.
At what point did we leave the cave or leave the fire and decide to sit around in a circle and all agree that this thing that we call reality is a unified construct that is basically an assembly of physical experiences like vision, like hearing, like taste and smell, as well as the physical surroundings of our environment. And now these buildings we create, the roads that we create, the streets that we walk on, and the cars that we drive, and the foods that we eat. When did we agree that this thing we call reality is a mathematically perfect situation that we all have to agree on? And more importantly, when did we agree that reality and consciousness, that this place and this perception vehicle in which we inhabit a certain ideological formation is entirely agreed upon? It's a very strange and interesting idea that we refer to reality as an agreed upon space. So when we say to someone, oh my God, they're so not in touch with reality, they're so checked out. Well, who's to say? Maybe they're not checked out. Maybe they're entirely existing in some perfect, mental, spiritual, and physiological utopia that we're not a part of, because we're bogged down into this thing that we call reality that has all of these constructs which are supposed to be true, like paying your rent on a certain day and stopping at the stop sign and buying fresh fruits and vegetables. When did we agree on that? So the psychedelic experience, Wikipedia says, a psychedelic experience is a temporary altered state of consciousness induced by the consumption of psychedelic drugs. Now, the part that gets me is an altered state of consciousness, because that implies that the non-altered state of consciousness is the agreed upon state of consciousness. Now I realize we have to do that so we can all create some sort of vehicle for cooperation, and we can exist in this world in some sort of state of harmony, to where we can all walk around and talk and communicate and touch and hold each other and love and empathize with each other. So we have to have sort of an agreed set of parameters. But who's to say that the psychedelic experience alters your state of consciousness? Perhaps the psychedelic experience takes you to the supreme state of consciousness, which isn't altered at all. Maybe it's the supreme truth of perfection and divinity that all of us earthlings, when we're again, mired down into the muck, have no idea about what's really going on. Okay, loves, episode 84. As I mentioned, this was recorded live at the Mindwave event here in downtown Los Angeles with myself, Daniele Bolelli, Michael Phillip, and Cory Allen, who all respectively have great podcasts, which the Drunken Taoists, the Astral, Hustle, and Third Eye Drops. Check them all out. They're great podcasts, and these are great guys. First time I'd ever met them all in person, and we sat around on a stage talking about spiritual materialism. Enjoy.
Was there any anticipation of what this was going to sound like?
I told him to go. I told him to go an octave higher than usual, just to throw everybody off. But so, are you spiking this set, or? Oh, okay. I'm going for it. Okay. So, this may seem like kind of a strange topic for white guys to talk about, especially because I think probably the most famous iteration of spiritual materialism is the book that Chogyam Trungpa. I'm very good at speaking, especially Tibetan Buddhist phrases. But the reason this came up as a topic of conversation is Cory and I recently had an experience where if there was a visual representation growing off of your body, like a new limb that you had been working on and honing for several years, and then you had an experience that made you want to just 128 hours style, like saw it off your body, like in excruciating pain, that's probably the equivalent of what this experience was, because it was one of those moments where everything you've been focused on and doing and making yourself a part of turns into something that you just don't want to be associated with.
But was the experience psychedelically enhanced? Like what created that metaphor of the 128 hours sort of,
I don't know.
Devil child growing from your belly? I mean,
that's a great question. It was not psychedelically enhanced, unfortunately.
I think that idea came from a protection mechanism of his own mind, where that was the only way he could handle the experience, was to go into fantasy.
Right. So with that, I'm going to let you describe, without throwing anyone or any organization under the bus, maybe we can somehow describe this experience.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of schools of thought in the world and a lot of ways to approach ideas, particularly intangible ideas. And that's where things become really slippery, is because there's no chartable way to, track what's actually happening if you're working on something inside, because it's not in the material world. It's in this, the resonance and organization and symbol structure of your own mind. So whenever you're working on, the quote-unquote spiritual path or something of that nature, or some philosophical idea or belief system, if you're trying to grow and move towards some set of ideas and ideology or what have you that you find truth in or you identify as being relevant, there's nothing to really stop you from going off into the rough. And it's hard. It's hard to track what is authentic, what actually has meaning, or some type of sensible empirical meaning in that world, because it's all relative to your own mind. And so it's very easy to, as I said before, if you're working on this thing and you share it with a friend, it's not like going to the gym or something. You can't show your metaphysical gains to your friend and be like, look at this, man, this spiritual bicep is now, how many ever inches or whatever. And that's why this stuff is so slippery, is because it exists within your mind. It exists right, it's woven very directly into your own experience of your reality. So, whenever you, get into that world, it gets very slippery. And the thing about that path is that the more you get into it and the deeper you get into it, the harder it becomes. The finer the frequency of consciousness, becomes, and you're aware of that, the more trickery it becomes, the more slippery it becomes, and the more inevitable traps and pitfalls that you will run into. One of those is beginning to kind of believe your own belief system too much. And whenever you, as I said, these things are complex, but you can get into this, what actually can be a search for community, or a search for, again, the slipperiness of the mind. You're looking for you say you're looking for, the quote unquote spiritual information or awareness, but really what's actually happening is that you're locked in your ego, looking for a way to create a hierarchy between you and the rest of the world by saying, oh, I know this, so I'm moving through life with a very straight back. I'm very calm. And I have this knowledge that all these people don't understand, There's that type of thing too. It's so easy to get subverted by your own ego, and it happens over and over and over again. So given that is not only a potential, but inevitability, whenever experiencing this stuff. That's why the cutting through idea, I think you mentioned Chogyam Trungpa, cutting through, using the knife of your intellect to cut through the bullshit of your own, the imagination and the traps that you can get drawn into and that you will get drawn into. This thing that we experienced was 100%, 1,000% off into the rough. It was into the woods. It was literally on another planet, according to some of them.
Before we go further, maybe we should ask if there's any extraterrestrials in the audience currently that could be offended by the following story, because basically that is relevant.
So in short, to sum up I think the point of what Michael was leading to with all that is that, there are a lot of belief systems based around reality that you can run into. And I think that the way to deal with those, whenever you find ones that are very detached from something empirical or something functional even, that's why I'm interested in all this stuff, is an idea is great, but how is it useful? How can you apply it to your own life? How can you use it to understand a deeper sense of who you are, and therefore increase the richness of your experience of your life? But you've using your discernment in those times, and not necessarily judging those people that you come across, but understanding that learning from their own experience and not getting wrapped up and attached to it.
This is a clear lead to talk about the UFC. How many of you guys watch Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC? Some of you guys? Okay. There's a point, I swear. Back in, I think it was 1993 when they started with UFC. Ever since martial arts first came to the West, there's always been these bullshit debates between my martial art is better than your kind of game. Karate is awesome, judo sucks. No, you don't know what you're talking about. Judo is amazing, kung fu sucks, and all this kind of pissing game that people play. The beauty of martial arts is that, unlike what we are talking about, having a very empirical dimension, a very physical dimension, that meant that you could only talk so long before somebody say, you know what, you say your way is the best, you say your way is the best. How about we throw you guys into a cage with minimal rules, you guys go at it, we can sit back, have a beer and see who's the best, let's test it out. And clearly, you can only keep talking about how amazing your methodology is. After the 10th time in a row that you get knocked out with a knee to the face, you're not going to be able to say, no, but really, my way is the best one. It's like, sorry, man, it's been proven now. How many times do you have to get knocked out to realize that's not working so well? Well, my dream is to be able, in a beautiful universe, I would like to have the UFC of religions, where, tonight in the cage, you have Islam and Buddhism go at it, and we sit back, have a beer, and see what happens. Because then all these bullshit arguments that people have for centuries and people kill each other over in the name of spirituality and religion would come to an end. Because there would be a very clear way to measure it, to test out the result of where certain ideas lead. And then, if they don't work, then you have to change the ideas, in the basic way of how a good human mind should work. Unfortunately, religions, spirituality, however you want to define it, when you're not talking about something intrinsically physical, it's kind of hard to measure the same way. Which doesn't mean there is no objective degree, because, if you see certain ideas lead people to chop off the head of people who disagree with them and make somebody else instead be nicer to their neighbors, there is a difference in where those ideas lead. But that difference is not quite as clear-cut, objective, obvious as a good knockout is. So my dream for the UFC of religions may be destined to fail. I'm very bummed.
But it's a great metaphor. I'm also reminded of one of the classic Ram Dass lines is the intellect is a great servant but a terrible master. And if you are the intellect, your own experiential analysis and perception of all of these methods and these practices and these, various, whatever, maybe institutions or methods or whatever that you get involved with, the trying to figure them out thing is always the trap, and at some point or another, every institution will let you down. Every method will also let you down. And again, back, it's a back to a Ram Dass thing. It's like, getting free from the method itself, having the method in a way let you down and exposing itself as a trap is the only way that you can actually use the method successfully, because then you're no longer dependent on it. And that's why, smart people, intellectual people who come from sort of an intellectual, sort of cognitive dissonance background, wrestle with the spiritual paradigms, wrestle with spiritual growth, because it's such a difficult thing to make sense of. And yes, Cory, like you were saying, you want to find a way to measure the spiritual growth and to measure your spiritual bicep and to show it off to the world and all of these different things, but it's almost not possible, right?
Yeah, and I think also the problem is our culture just venerates the individual so much and venerates hierarchy and accomplishment so much that we also naturally apply that paradigm onto spirituality, right? Like there's going to be first I'm going to get, to use the martial arts metaphor, first I'm going to get my yellow belt and then I'm going to get my purple belt and then one day I'll be a black belt of whatever given philosophy is. But obviously, whatever spirituality really is, and I would not deign to put a label on that, is not that. It is not this realm of hierarchy where, you're here, I'm here, and eventually I'll get to where you are. And I think because we're so trained to think that way, we don't even realize we're digging. We're in a pit, and then we're digging deeper and deeper and deeper into the same pit that we've fallen into, thinking that we're headed somewhere, when really we're just stuck in that same realm of delusion, right? So I guess maybe a practical way to go with this would be, how do you get out of that way of thinking? How do you actually start to take steps to make yourself feel more at home in the human condition and with your shortcomings and the things that you've got into spirituality for in the first place, right? Obviously, we're looking for something. There's a thirst out there. Like, I mean, and it's not being quenched by any of the traditional sources.
Well, let me I do want to share a little anecdote on this. In my tradition, or I use that term lightly, in my tradition, but the tradition that I'm most associated with in the spiritual path, I sing this prayer, and part of my practice called the Hanuman Chalisa, right? And so it's a really long, complicated Hindu prayer and everything, and I teach it and things like that. And people come to me wanting to learn it, and can you please teach me how to sing it and all this kind of thing. And always the people who can't get it and who fail are the people who, oh my God, I've got to learn the Hanuman Chalisa because it's so long and it's so complicated, and I'm just going to oh my God, it's so cool. And those are always the people who fail, who can't ever get it because they're forcing themselves to it's some, measurable mark. And the people who do get it are always the people who are just called to it, and it's just kind of dropped on their lap by something bigger than themselves.
I think on this, there's connected to what you were saying about methodologies, connected with what you're saying right now. I tend to distrust all those narratives that are too easily packaged. The 7 steps to spiritual mastery, the 13 things to whatever the fuck. There's always like a clear method. You follow these steps, and this result is going to turn out. I get the same thing even when, even people I like. Sometimes I listen to their tales. Like classics are people going through ayahuasca journeys, and half of the time I hear the tale always being the same: is I go in, it's hard, I face my demons, and I come out from the other side, and everything is bright and amazing, and I'm reborn, and life is wonderful again. And I'm like, damn, you live in a nice... my universe doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. There's not this clear linear path where everything works out. It's like problem, solution, Disney music come at the end, everybody's happy. Yeah. I find it's... And this is not to say that there are no insights or there are no moments where something really click, but I find it messier. And I find that sometimes we like to oversimplify things for the sake of, maybe because that's the kind of storytelling that we're used to. We are used to stories with a beginning, a crisis, and a resolution. Whereas I tend to find life to be more a beginning, a crisis, a resolution, a crisis, a resolution, a double crisis, triple crisis. Oh, it's like it goes back and forth a lot. And I think sometimes if we are used to this simple tale, the 7 way, the 3 steps, the whatever the hell, we then get bummed out when it doesn't work out that way. And most of the time it doesn't work out that way because life, again, is not that simple. To me, it's like I can have the greatest day ever when I have an insight where I'm like, this transformed my life, now I got it. And 3 days later, I'm just lost in some little petty bullshit that I'm like, really? This is the same person that the other day had it so perfectly? I was on, man. I had it. It was in everything I did. And because in that sense, I don't feel that what makes me is a singular identity. Like there's a process that's going on that's constantly changing. Granted, eventually I think that if I take 5 steps in one direction, 4 in another, I am steering the boat in a certain direction, but it's never that simple. That's why I distrust simple methodologies. Mm-hmm. And methodologies are great because we need something to get us from point A to point B, right? You need a map, you need directions, but also a little more acknowledging that things are more complicated. Then the human beings are not that clear-cut.
And it feels to me like a lot of this conversation, too, is symptomatic of the Western perception and the Western interpretation of Eastern nonlinear practices. In the West, a great example is yoga. What we refer to here in yoga is exercise yoga and asana. Level 2 and 3 classes, level 1 classes. There's no level 3 class of yoga in India. There's just a yoga class. There isn't an advancement just because you can't, do a whatever pose, and that way doesn't make you, any more or less advanced than the other. So in the West, we have this sense of creating measurement and of creating steps and of creating achievement. And then certain levels give you a certain implication that you're smarter or better or further along the path. And whereas I think that's completely the opposite, kind of the inherent what mysticism is. I mean, the inherent terminology of what mysticism is. Mysticism is a non-linear, amorphous, flow of just magic, love, loss, struggle, suffering, light.
Yeah, I think that one of the huge struggles that we have, like in Western culture, with it, is because we're brought up into always believing that in order to have something, you have to attain it, you have to grab it. We go through life saying we need to consume, you need to buy. In order to have this thing, you need to go buy this thing. In order to have this self-identification, you need to wear these sneakers or whatever it is that you want, that you go out to seek to attain the feeling that you're looking for. Whenever really the path in which we're talking about here, in my opinion, is actually the exact opposite of that. It's the undoing of all of that. It's the getting out of all of those thought systems. It's the removing and your own system of beliefs that you've decided to believe on, usurping your own structure and own map, and getting beyond that and looking beyond that, and using all these belief systems that are out there. Because ultimately, what are we doing? We're trying to not find the answer from that some other person wrote, because we won't be happy with that. We can't go find this other exact path, this Buddhist lineage, this Christian lineage, this Hindu, whatever the thing is, this freaky alien New Age lineage, whatever it might be. Because none of those will make sense, because they're limited, because they've been defined. And what a person, the individual, will find that works for them is something that they come to themselves, because it's for them, because all of our minds are different. We're all these little nerves, nerve cells of the divine, wiggling, taking readings from the world outside of our bodies and abstracting these unique perception of what the universe even seems to be. So we need to define a language for ourselves based on experience and ideas, where you can find out what the world means to you and how it means something to you. Because meaning, looking for meaning in life, there's no meaning out there. There's just happening, but our meaning comes from our own definition and association and resonance with experiences. So that's we build the meaning in our subjective minds through that. So, I think a good way to work with these things is to explore those paths, explore, any of these traditions or paths here that we were talking about, and even, fringe experimental type of ways of thinking, but always from a place of, sincerity, but not seriousness. Understand the idea of it, but don't get wrapped up in an ideology, because the ideology that you're looking for is the one that is doing the looking at all of these different ideologies. Whenever you get what's above these systems that you study, that's where the actual knowing and the thing that people are looking for is, because that's your own authentic relative reality of what you are. Because all of this, as I said, is about finding yourself, and being comfortable with what you are and how you experience the world. And I think that doing that in a not in a clinical way per se, but allowing yourself to go into these different ways of thinking and try and learn something meaningful and functional from them is very healthy, and you can learn a lot. But I think it's, as Daniele was saying, going into any of them thinking they're going to be a solution, you'll only be disappointed.
Yeah, and touching back on the idea of undoing, because that's so key. Like, none of us in this room need more shit. Physically, mentally, idea-wise, philosophy-wise. We've been exposed to plenty of information, and it's time to start eliminating and hacking through the nonsense. Like, and again, there's a great Trungpa anecdote about like an empty room, if anybody's familiar with this. It's like, you start with this big empty white room, right? And there's nothing in the room. And once you realize you're in the room and the room is blank, you want to put something in the room. So you get a great piece of art and you think, wow, this art is fucking fantastic. And everybody comes over and they look at this art and you think, let's get more art. So pretty soon you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of art, and take this to its logical conclusion, and you've just got a room full of antique shit, right? That isn't doing you any good. Yeah. You're not able to pay proper attention or give the proper respect to each one of these things individually. And that's our minds, like, in our culture, for sure. And believe it or not, like, the junk in this scenario, like, in this kind of hoarder, rat feces filled garage scenario, the turds are the philosophies. Like the turds could be like Buddhism could be one if it's one that you're not treating with the proper respect. Whatever it is, that could be as good as garbage if you're not using it in the right way and you're just using it as a way to like put another peacock feather in your cap. And I think that's what we all. I mean, I certainly do it. I think everybody does it, and I think the sooner we all realize that, the closer we'll be getting to starting to unpack that shit.
Oh man, I think that's just great. A couple months ago, I have a very impulsive social media streak where I'm just like, I don't think before I post kind of thing, or before I comment, and it doesn't always serve me well. But a couple of months ago, man, I just kind of hit this tipping point of complete frustration with everybody kind of in my social network around kind of self-help culture. And as many self-help books as I read, and I'm writing one right now myself, but still, I just was like, enough self-help books, fucking enough flavor of the month, self-help quote.
Yeah, and if you did it yourself, you didn't need any help.
Like, you stop, put the fucking book down. You've got the information you need. I promise you do. If you're reading this post, if you're here right now, too, I'm sure everyone in this room has the information they already need.
Is that how you sold the book to your publisher?
Yeah. No, but my agent said I did have to put that post in the book,
And getting back to this idea of sawing something off of yourself painfully that I was talking about in the beginning, I think that's why we're so instinctually afraid of just realizing that the answer is nothing. Right? Is that we need to travel?
Openness.
It's openness, right?
Which, not just people mistake nothing for nihilism a lot, and I just like to make that distinction.
No, you're totally right. You're totally right. But the idea of opening your perception up past your individual self and the ego that you've started to believe in over the course of your whole life, like this thing that is you, and the idea of separating whatever that you behind the you is from this thing you've spent so much time sculpting and perfecting and trying to get just right, and just the right job and just the right partner and just the right status and all of these things. You don't want someone to come in and say, nah, cut all that away. Cut all that 20, 30 years or 40, however many years of work you've done. Cut it away. It's not the answer. And I think that's why we have such a difficult time, especially in this culture, making any real existential, I don't even know if there's such a thing as existential progress. That sounds kind of
what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that Zach and I were talking about just the other day. Was like it is difficult in that process of unattachment. You can get rid of things. You can live in an empty warehouse by yourself, but you're still identifying the self. You're still identifying the you in all of that. And it's challenging. It's like politically, whenever you talk to someone else who has a diametrically opposed political view, oftentimes people will get violent and aggressive if you're speaking to the right one, because their belief system is all that they know as reality. And so that's why they're so passionately fighting for it, is because they think that is truth. And the frustration comes from them. The horizon of their mind is a lot closer perhaps to them than some other people. So whenever you start to critically, dismantle or argue with points of their belief system, which they hold as absolute truths, it's undoing their reality. And that goes down to a deeper kind of reptilian brain level of actually feeling like a personal attack. Because if you begin to dissolve and attack what they identify as their ego structure, it feels like it's dissolving the them. So it's the untheming of their philosophy and their belief system. So that's why people get, physically aggressive whenever you argue with points, religion or politics or what have you. I think the solution to that is speaking in a way of non-absolutes and ideas as opposed to facts and answers whenever having those conversations. But the hard thing about that is that you have to realize that, in that example I gave, say that you're speaking with just as a low-hanging fruit example, a Trump supporter or something like that, and they're getting very frustrated because you're trying to express to them that, no, we want women's equality, all these crazy ideas like that. And, you look at them, you think, how can they not see? How can't they understand that women should have the same equal rights as men? Like, it doesn't register to me how they can't understand that. And to them, they truly don't understand that. They don't believe that. So one of the tricky parts in this process of self-awakening is you have to do that to yourself, and you have to be both of those people in that interaction. You have to be able to look at your own reality and say, I believe the world is this, and then be able to see beyond the veil of your own knowing of what is. And that's where you get to the openness that Michael was talking about. But that's why this is so challenging, and there's so many of these pitfalls and illusions, because it's so much easier to put on a, type of clothing, that represents an idea, as opposed to actually cut through that and, more move towards the truth of yourself.
This reminds me of a conversation you and I had, Daniele, about going through life wearing a set of glasses, right? Like you're wearing the Republican glasses, you're wearing the Democrat glasses, the Buddhist, whatever, pick your philosophy. And then some people having it where the lens is actually fused into their face, where they can't even tell that they're wearing the lens anymore because it's just merged with their subjective reality to such a deep, deep level. And when you first start trying to do that act of peeling these things off your face, it's really painful. And I think this is what you and I were talking about specifically, is like people like Robert Anton Wilson talk about reality tunnels and identifying what your own reality tunnel is and being able to look through other people's reality tunnel. And even though it does hurt to peel that lens off first, then you're like, oh, now I get to play with other lenses. Like now I can play in the extraterrestrial new age. Let's just keep picking on that one. Like the extraterrestrial new age one where like, and I'm fucking kid you guys not. So we were talking about this so much. This has been like the go-to inside joke with Cory and I, like just jokes about this dude that we met. And one night I was like in that hypnagogic state between sleeping and waking. And I started to have this like dream where I seriously felt like I was communicating with something else transmitting information to me. And I got all skeptical with it, and I go, how do I know you're not me? And then this thing answered back. It paused for like 10 seconds, and it goes, I am you. And I'm like, well, if you're me, then what part of me are you? And then it just kind of went, wake up now. And then I woke up, and I had hit that brick wall. But that's what I'm saying is like, when you play in those realms, sometimes really fun, weird shit like that happens. And I don't really think I'm an extraterrestrial or that I'm in contact with extraterrestrials now, but it's still fun to have those experiences and think about it.
I think in that sense, connected with what you guys are saying, we tend to identify too much with our thoughts, with our opinions, with the stuff. Even like if you look at the typical, I don't know why the hell my brain is going there, but if you look at the typical dating site, what do people say? What you like, what you don't, because you think that somehow if you match that way, then you're going to click as human beings. And to me, it's like, we can like the same music, we can watch the same movies, we can be dead on the same on paper, and we got nothing in common energy-wise as human beings, and vice versa. And I think about, it's funny, I think about my girlfriend now, and it's like I stop to think, because she basically hardly ever say a word to other people. Once in a while she talks to me, not that much. She mainly just smile a lot. She's adorable. She fights like hell in a cage. She goes back to being sweet and mellow. And we click perfectly without saying a damn word half of the time. And like she had that thing with, it was pretty funny. She was driving my dad somewhere, and I asked her, like, how was it? Because you guys were in a long drive together. And she was like, oh, that was awesome. It was great quality time together. I turned to my dad an hour later or something. So today, how did it go when you guys were on that ride? He's like, that was cool, but, we didn't really say a word to each other the whole time. And in her mind, it was like perfect quality time, because we are more than our words. We are more than what we say. We are more than our opinions, than our thoughts. There's something else going on our words are part of it. Don't get me wrong. I like shooting bullshit with people, going back, and not just bullshit. Sometimes words do trigger something inside of us that lead to deeper changes that has a real impact. But to me, this is... it's a game. It's kind of the Zen Buddhist idea of, the finger pointing to the moon. It's useful to direct you there, like, look, it's out there, but the real deal is not the finger, it's that thing you're trying to point to. I see all this stuff we're talking about, these identities. I am a Buddhist. I am a Republican. I am a Democrat. I am a whatever the hell. These are all games we play to some degree, because life is always more fluid and more. It's not just more complicated. It's more. There are more layers to it than any one label can ever capture. I don't trust any label. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be the best label in the world. It's still not gonna grasp life in the fullest. So that's what interests to me, is finding ways of approaching life, finding ways of approaching each other that's not just based on mental constructs, on identities, on these. And then when somebody challenges your identity, they are challenging, my sense of security about life. Get rid of your sense of security. Life is fun as is. You don't need that damn sense of security all the time, because if anything, that's what's shielding you from feeling. Like in terms of empathy, which what you were saying, in terms of being able to put yourself in behind the eyes of anybody, you're not going to be able to do it if you're stuck in an identity. You're only going to be able to do it if you can flow more. And identities do the opposite of flowing. They are what impedes the flow.
And we're living in a world right now to where that is emphasized more than it's ever been. Yeah, well, establishing labels for different groups of people, and thus, causing separation based on those labels. And I find myself, I'm partly to blame. I'm a culprit all the time because I'm a knee-jerk hippie liberal, obviously, and you combat the Trump machine, and then it's like, oh my God, this person must be bad, or like the kind of the general sort of like new atheism revolution that's sort of looking at Islam as like, well, they're all crazy, and if we keep perpetuating this idea of labels, which results in separation, I can say that, sure, Sharia law and all that goes on with that seems pretty problematic to me, I guess, right? From a logical, rational American mind, seems pretty strange to me. But, the 1.2 billion people who practice Islam, and however many of those believe in Sharia law, they do it by choice. It makes them happy. They're happy being being a Muslim. They're happy with their practice. They're happy with their path to God. And I know that it's not a solution to say, well, 1.2 billion of you are out of your fucking minds and you're part of the problem. That much I know. It's, that's not going to get us anywhere. So.
Yeah, I think it puts us in a weird position, because I think when you're born into a philosophically homogenized culture and you don't really have a lot of other examples, and it's not acceptable to explore other examples, it's like we're in that room scenario and you do have that one painting, and sure, maybe that's better than having a million, rat turd filled pieces of like antiques, but on the other hand, it's kind of like, and I'm sure we've all separately or together had this conversation, that at some point you need to go through the whole gamut of experiences and return back to the starting point to really appreciate the sacredness, whatever that means, of the starting point, right? Like you have to have too much shit and then cut it down. Otherwise, you're going to be at that starting point and not realize how great that thing that you had to begin with is. And I guess in this scenario, that's like the ego, because that's what this all comes down to, is being able to like pack things onto it, attach things to it, remove things from it, break it down, build it up, do all of those things, and then get back to some sort of equilibrium that's healthier for you and healthier to the world. And I guess at this point in the conversation, we might as well try to talk about something practical and ask the question, first let's pretend we know that we're here for a reason, not by some crazy cosmic mistake of, physics or whatever, and who the fuck knows. But since we are all like sentient sacks of stardust living individual, reality tunneled lives, how do we do that responsibly? Because a lot of these ideas have been all about unpacking and undoing and being more open and whatever, but we're still going to be individuals having individual experiences, trying to grow on our own. So how do you do that? Because there is part of me that loves the whole Joseph Campbell monomyth, hero's journey, and you're talking about like having these victories, like going through an ayahuasca ceremony or a psychedelic experience that really is like death practice, right? It's like you go in, you have this crazy harrowing experience inside of yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, and it melts you down and you come out of it and you really feel like you did learn something, but now you've got to internalize that and go back into your life and do something with it, right? So I guess my question for all of you smart human beings is how do we do that?
I mean, the easiest and most direct way I can give to that is just focusing on realizing that that you're perceiving something at all. I mean, that's one of the greatest tools I think I ever learned, was just understanding that my reality was a perception. And some of you can not only intellectually know, but then go through life realizing that, as I was saying earlier, my nervous system and everything inside of this, skin-wrapped thing I identify as a Cory is taking a reading from this ocean through which I'm a content, and I'm absorbing all this information, the cyclical feedback loop based on my inherited behavior, past experience, all cultural things, all of that stuff. Just knowing that everything I experience in life is just this, this frequency, this small layer of what is there, based upon what I can perceive. Know that you're taking a reading. Know that your reality is subjective. And then whenever you experience other people, the whole problem of getting into arguments with other people, with judging other people, being angry at the way that people think, all that stuff goes away because you realize that like these people are as real and true as my reality seems. That's how their reality seems to them. And neither of us are right. We just simply are. So whenever you're in conversation with someone or with an idea or something like that, don't get so invested in trying to fit it into your ego and apply your name to this whole thing, but just realize like this person is experiencing this reality. I am experiencing this reality. And if you approach it from that perspective, even if that other person isn't, that approach often awakens a sense of compassion and patience and understanding and flexibility within your own mind, which actually, in most cases, provides a real sense of comfort, which is communicated to the other person, that allows them to open up and allows them to have the same type of flexibility and the same type of awareness, so you can actually have a real conversation about something meaningful, as opposed to just being trapped and fighting with your own preferences.
I struggle with this because on one end, I agree 100%, right? And actually, I agree.
Well, you're a savage. That's the problem.
Well, there's that, yes. I feel like sometimes my mind, there's this never-ending tug of war between Buddha and Arya Stark from Game of Thrones, where, it's like I'll understand this and I'll think, most of the time I think that's the right solution, right? It's like, yes, I want to be able to have a higher degree of empathy, being able to see the world through the other person's eyes, because it will lead to usually better interactions, But then there's the day where I don't feel like it, and where it just kind of like when I drop off my daughter in second grade on a fairly regular basis, we say goodbye by saying, "May your blade get drunk on the blood of your enemies," which is always a perfect second grade thing to have in mind. And sometimes it's just like, I know that I should go there. I really don't feel like it today. And I do find myself getting into, a more argumentative kind of thing, or getting more into. And I think that if I get trapped there, that's a bad thing. If that's my default response and I'm always responding in a conflictual kind of way, that's just stupid. That's a stupid game I'm playing. That doesn't serve anybody. By the same token, I feel that if I'm every single day, I try to play Buddha on the mountain of like, I understand you, my dear brother. I understand where you come from, and we'll find this place of empathy. That's not really who I am either. It's who I am some of the time, but not who I want to be all the time. And so maybe I think I'm going back to this. Maybe there are just some schizophrenic tendencies in my personalities where I like having these multiple things going on inside of me at the same time. But I do find myself curious each day of, is Buddha going to show up? Is Arya Stark going to show up? Which one is going to be? And half of the time I don't know it until.
And I'm sure it's many more than just those two as
totally.
well. Right?
Of course.
I mean, I think that, what you just said really just, there's something fascinating in that there's sort of that default empathy sort of kind of new age response to like, I understand you, brother. It's okay, But I've kind of shifted that in a way to be like, no, I don't understand what it's like to grow up in the slums of Mumbai or what it's like to live on Skid Row 3 blocks away here. I mean, it's right down the street. I don't have any idea what that's like. But I can still have total acceptance for you. And to me, that lies, the question that you posed, I think, we all have different answers for it, and we all have maybe different solutions and practices to, get into that realization of, or maybe that attempt of having some responsibility out there in the world. But, the older I get, the more I believe that consciousness is a unified, disembodied field, and that the individual just has their own sort of, antenna, as what Albert Hoffman called the television antenna, to perceive that consciousness, which creates your personality, which creates your own perception. But it is not your own consciousness. It is not your own reality. It's all a shared field, or what you called sentient stardust, that we're all inhabiting. And your stardust is the same stardust as my stardust. And as cliche and trite and as New Age 101 as that is still, that's the core problem that we see in the world, is that we don't believe that we're connected, that we don't believe we have anything in common, that we insist on imposing our will on other cultures, other belief systems, other economic classes, other races, other sexual preferences. We insist on doing that, and it's failed time and time and time again. I mean, and history proves that now. So maybe one day we'll change.
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about this exact thing too. With sometimes it is necessary to be like the instrument of. Yeah, I think it was the specific example was it a Buddhist teacher who was getting attacked by someone, and he just allowed this crazed person to beat him.
That pissed me off.
Rather than just be like, objectively, what this person is doing in this moment, attacking me, is wrong, right? So is it right or wrong for him to accept the beating in that situation, right? And I mean, I personally don't think it is right to accept the beating. And whoever's, when you're being punched in the face by some stranger, I mean, that stranger probably deserves the same thing, right? I mean, I don't know. I would like to ask you guys this, but I think it's open to discussion, and this is something that's actually, just assume everything I'm talking about in this whole talk is going to have something to do with Trungpa. But he talks about, like, in some part of that Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism book, there's like a question and answer portion, and somebody asks him, what if doing the right thing includes violence? And he goes, then do violence. It's like he just straight up says, just do violence. But it has to be, it's not that there's any action in and of itself that's an incorrect action. It depends on why you're doing that action, right? Like if you have the overview perspective of the whole situation, and you can say this person's doing this because of that person's doing that because of this, the proper thing to do in this situation is to punch that guy in the face. Like, right. There are times where that is the answer, I think. Probably 99 times out of 100 it's not, but...
Yeah, I mean, people mistake that mindfulness and spirituality, is the way that I see it, has something to do with oopy-goopy, warm and fuzzy kumbaya-ness. I mean, I don't think that at all. I mean, you could be a mindful serial killer. I'm very, very aware and present that I'm, scooping this person's brain out with a spoon.
Yeah, and this whole, I'm totally like a total conundrum on mindfulness being brought into the military for that exact reason. It's like, whoa, we're actually bringing mindfulness to the military to make them better killers.
Well, I mean, I guess that's one perspective on it, but
what's the other?
Well, the other perspective is dealing with that situation, emotionally, and as a human being a lot more palpably than just compartmentalizing and then exploding. It's like preempting, PTSD as opposed to just, setting as much, black powder into this keg as possible. It's releasing pressure along the way, I would think. But I mean, the idea of, as I was saying, you could be a mindful serial killer, and maybe I am, but, it's not about this oopy goopy saccharine spirituality thing. That's what I was talking about earlier, about like the very calm voice and straight back. And I mean, that's not spirituality. That's identification. That's someone seeing a thing where they first heard the idea that they thought was interesting and then replicating the visual concept of that thing because they think that the idea has to do with the look of that thing. That's human mimicry. That's tribal stuff. That's all that is. I think that to me, the real goal of mindfulness is waking up to a level of self-awareness. It's just about understanding what's happening in your mind, the river of thoughts that are arising in your consciousness, being more aware of it so that you respond to life instead of react to it like a knee-jerk reaction. In that space that's created in mindfulness, I think often, compassion and patience and those type of things that are normally ornaments to these ways of thinking arises because that seems to be a natural side effect of a larger thinking. But when you're talking about is violence the answer in some situations, I mean, yes. if that's what it calls for, if someone is attacking you, then why would you not defend yourself? And that's I think that sitting there and taking a beating is probably just well-deserved for somebody and necessary. Maybe it'll wake them up a little bit because you're so far in a rabbit hole of your own cocoon of belief that you think you wouldn't fight back. And I get the philosophy, I get where that's coming from, but I think it's just, a cancerous way of thinking.
I think that's why my all-time idol is this guy, E.Q. Sojun. He was a Zen guy from late 1300s, early 1400s. And one of the things there are a couple of stories about him that I'll tell you real quick just to give you the vibe and how it relates to what Cory is saying right now. There's a tale that the Zen establishment of his days was trying to kind of reel him back in because he was a bit too wild, he was clearly a genius. His grasp of Zen was far beyond what anybody around, but he was kind of clashing with what the official Zen establishment was like. So at one point, they give him, in Zen Buddhist tradition, you get this certificate of enlightenment to prove that you're enlightened by the previous teacher. And in fact, if you look at it, it is like, you're kidding me, right? The certificate of enlightenment, so he burned it, which is a kind of a big deal because it's sort of like, your PhD without which you cannot teach you cannot run a monastery without it kind of thing. And in one time, they do try to give him a monastery to say, maybe we'll kind of make him part of our thing. We will give him some responsibilities. 9 days go by. Where the hell is EQ? We can't find him anymore. They go look for him, and they find just this poem he left behind that basically says, look, 10 days in this temple and I'm done. This stuffy monks, I can't bear with this stuff. But if anybody's looking for me, I'm either at the sake shop or at the brothel. So, see you guys. For the rest of his life, his three main driving passions are, in no particular order, Zen, women, and alcohol. That's kind of what he's at. And his thing is, unlike the people who, in every single spiritual tradition, they say one thing and do another. So they will do all those things, but ashamed and hiding. His thing will be, no, I'm a human being. As long as I'm not hurting anybody, as long as I'm not causing pain to any other living being, then it's not what you do that makes you spiritual. It's not that, if I meditate on the mountains, then I'm spiritual, whereas if I'm having an orgy, I'm not. To him is sacred and profane are made-up concepts. To him is what makes sacred or profane an experience is your degree of consciousness going in it, your degree of awareness, your degree of... And I find it so refreshingly human, because it's about achieving a certain state of consciousness, not censoring your action or your instincts, or you're not supposed to feel this, or it's like, be human, be who you are, just a little nicer. That's a good step, So I love EQ. He's my guy.
Yes. Are we? Were you giving us the signal before, Noah? Or are we hitting the ontological wall of discourse? Yeah. Sure. Okay. Cool.
Anything else you guys want to jump in?
Are we going to do like any sort of questions or anything, if anybody wants to? Hard ones. That's part of the extraterrestrial. When he approached us in our little social circle, the way he broke the ice was by walking over with a very wide stance, and then also saying, "Ask me a question, a hard one," like that. So extraterrestrials love having their knowledge challenged. Apparently,
I just asked him why he came over and talked to us.
Conspiracy theorists too, like really hardcore tinfoil hat conspiracy, like challenge me, dude.
It was exactly like. But the one crazy thing though was you did have sort of a weird possible like psychic harmonic with him, didn't you? Because I'm going to blow your cover and just say you confessed to me at one point that you were essentially like shooting bullets of mental fuck yous at this guy, and then he turns to you and goes, "You're talking to me mentally, man. What do you want to say?" Isn't that what he did?
He just said.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like. He's like, you're talking to me psychically, bro.
Pretty much.
That's what he said. Yeah, that's what he said. I promise you there was a bro in there, at least one. Probably multiple.
Well, it's on camera, so who knows? We'll have to review the tape. But basically, yeah, whenever we were in this den of horse shit, like I was walking in all of the, I was saying this earlier, this guy was the most high-octane douchebag I'd ever met in my entire life. And all of the Nietzsche I read in my teenage years was just coming up, just clawing up the mountain of myself. And I was thinking, I haven't felt this grumpy. This is a great test of my ability to manage my own thoughts and reality and all the things I'm always saying. Like, how will this go? Anyway, so the thing that's frustrating about that
I like C-
is I was trying not to talk about it at the beginning because it's such a large conversation with it necessitates so much nuance that I want to monopolize everything. But basically, the problem with that whole enterprise is that it's next doors with a lot of the things that the four of us talk about all the time, who I would say that we are trying to be rational and reasonable and just in search of ideas, not answers, and looking for meaning and truth and all those type of things. And the thing that was so frustrating about that is that there's some of the same language, even a couple of the same people involved, some of which canceled their appearances. But, and so it's sort of like, it's just adding fat to the truth. It's adding fat to, at the end of the day, minus all of the, joking aside or any of the stuff, like what I want to do with everything I'm doing is reduce suffering and increase awareness. With every podcast, with every, conversation, that's the goal. That's the whole MO. And these people are doing the exact opposite. And it's by diluting people who are involved in that, who are probably in search of community, who are in search of some type of friend, a connection, an idea, an identity. And they are moving them further from a place where they'll find something closer to real peace and real ways to reduce their suffering. And that's why, ironically, the reason why I wanted to smash that guy's face in was because he was making so many people suffer more.
Right. And I... so much of what we've talked about in this last hour, emphasizes sort of the elasticity of truth, of the malleability of truth and perceptions and things like that. But I agree a lot with what you said, Cory. I mean, I think that love and compassion and the removal of suffering is a universal truth, and that we can all agree on that. Different political systems, ideologies, economic systems, whatever. Class systems, those are all, perception things. But love, compassion, ease of suffering is something that is a universal truth.
And if anyone ever wants to really feel compassion, if they're not used to some of these ideas, I think one of the saddest things in the world is seeing someone eating while they're crying. That's so fucked up. Like, so if you have a hard time feeling sorry for people, watch somebody somewhere. You can make it happen, I suppose, or you could set it up to make it happen as a little experiment, or you could just go online, watch videos of people eating while crying. God, that's sad. It's like an emotional pain while having biological sustenance. It's like, you know what I mean? It's so complex and layered that, like, it's so, well, I mean, it's reality, man.
I think the fact that it's like paradoxically also funny is also a great way to just like wrap a bow on the conversation, because if you can laugh at the human condition, I think you win.
That's right. Beautiful. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
So there's going to be, it's 3:08, let's say 3:20, we'll be doing the next podcast. It'll be Michael Donovan, Kelly McLean, and myself. So if you have to go to the bathroom, you want to get some water, dream bars, or if you want to stay put, that's cool too. But in 12 minutes.
Have you found the others yet? Have you found the others? Have you found the others yet? Have you found the others? Have you found the others yet? Have you found the others? Have you found the others yet? Have you found the others?